day sort of thing. So, anyways, hello and welcome to episode 50 is the golden episode. Tom, we made it to 50. Really exciting. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. Be sure to follow all of us on social media. Whether you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Thanks for joining with us today. I'm your host, Steven. Tom is here. Tom, here's a joke for you. I know we were just talking about a second ago. Here's a baseball joke. Let me pull it up here. I have it with me. All right. The joke of the day is, what's the difference between a pickpocket and an umpire?
Pickpocket and an umpire. You think for a second. All right, go ahead. What? I don't know what.
One steals watches and one watches steals.
Oh boy, that's good. That's a good one. I like
Yeah,
that.
I looked it up right before I started. I was like, you know what, we need to do a baseball joke, create some happiness around this time, and baseball season is almost here. Spring training is opening up next week, so I just thought some of our listeners and you would enjoy that.
I'll save the one
Yeah,
I told you earlier for next time. I'll save that one for later.
yeah, oh yeah, the Torque Norris one, yeah,
Yeah, I'll
another
say.
time, yeah.
Yeah, later. I'll save that one for later. One joke per episode, I think would be a good one.
Yeah, like I think for our listeners, for those who are listening, if you like to have a joke of the day where we kind of either Tom and me we share a joke, baseball joke, whatever it is, we'll do that for you.
Mm,
But like I said, 50 episodes of the podcast. Thank you so
mm,
much for everyone for listening. I was just sharing with Tom just today. So last week's podcast, we had I think 44 plays at least on Spotify, which tied the most that we've ever had on the podcast. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. It means to us more than you know. It really does.
yeah.
So today, oh,
Yeah,
you go
one thing
ahead.
I can say. Yeah, just real quick. Well, first of all, happy milestone to us. And one thing I can say for yeah, all of our listeners out there, we appreciate it. And like I said, I think Steve and I have commented in the past. If you ever want to chit chat with us on a DM, feel free to reach out to I think both of us on either of our Twitter X handles, and gladly we'll talk. We'll talk. Have a nice, healthy baseball conversation. We're always open to it. I, for one, am always open to talk baseball.
hmm And by the way, big shout out to Blake Street Banner. Send me
Oh,
this.
great! I
Yeah,
saw you. I saw your picture with that on Twitter X. That
yeah,
was. I don't know. I hate calling Twitter X. It's weird. Anyway, but
yeah.
yeah,
I still
that
call
is
it
an
Twitter.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's an awesome shirt. I think
yeah,
I'm definitely going to be interested in buying one of those too. So Blake Street Banner,
yeah.
shout out to you guys for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, they sent us some seeds, Chinook seeds. I'm going to try those out. So again, thank you for that. And awesome time with Lewis last week. That was really, really cool. So today
Mhm.
we're going to really focus on the catchers and the infielders. We're going to do a preview, kind of talk about each player that we think will be on the roster, maybe even some minor league guys that we might see on the roster in the infield or just catchers. I guess we can start off with catchers. So right now it's there's a possibility we might be seeing some action in AAA. Maybe
Mhm.
Willie McIver or Drew Romo. But we've mentioned last week with Lewis that it looks like Drew Romo is probably going to stay down in AAA for a majority of the season. Willie McIver is very interesting. He was down in AAA for majority, if not all of last year with
Mhm.
the Isotopes. I think right now it's the start of the season. It's pretty safe to say that it's going to be Elias Diaz and Jacob Stallings. Elias Diaz, he's coming. I believe he's going into his last year of his
Yeah.
contract.
Yes, he
Um,
is.
yeah, last year Elias, he had he of course he was the all-star not shortstop, catcher. Could have said shortstop. 267 hitter, 14 home runs, 72 RBIs, and a stolen base, and a 725 OPS. So, again, he was an all-star catcher, not a shortstop. Um, Second half really kind of dropped a little bit. I know some fans were upset that we didn't trade him. But I think, with what the season that he's had last year really helped the Rockies, especially in the second half. And I've mentioned this before that I feel like the Rockies played a lot better in the second half of the season, where in the first half they really struggled. Like, of course, they had injuries, but really in the second half they started playing a little bit better, more consistent. Just a lot of those games just got out of hand, especially with the bullpen because the bullpen was tired out, and I remember we talked about that when we were closing out the season last year. And so, Elias Diaz, hopefully he doesn't have a down year. He doesn't take a step back. sometimes we see that in baseball where a player has one big year and then he kind of, I don't know, regresses a little bit. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think Diaz, he's still going to be a solid catcher for us, and potentially a trade piece coming up in July.
Yeah, Diaz, I mean, that was quite a moment in the All-Star game. All-Star game MVP, to hit the go-ahead homer that would eventually be the difference in the All-Star game. Um, it's how do I say this? It is, well, first of all, just to confirm, I think in case you didn't hear me, this is the last year of his contract. And to comment, just to clarify for all the listeners in terms of the first half, second half splits, I have it right here in front of me. In the first half, he had an OPS of 763. In the second half, 674. He caught 21 less, or he started 21 less games than he did in the first half. I think that's a little different than you, but he'll be. And let me just check one more thing here. He will turn 34 in next November. So this will be his age 33 season. The Stalling signing, I do like it. People are wondering it's not a big splash move. Obviously, he's not offensive first catcher, but it's a good signing considering they don't need him to. They're not going to rely on his offense. They're going to rely on his defense. And to your comment about the games he catches, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe they add him to the DH rotation where he catches fewer games. But if he's having a good offensive season, which we hope he does, you can keep that bat in the lineup, and you can get better defense on the plate with Jacob Stallings. And I do think it's understandably. I do like, however, they did give the team option to Jacob Stallings for 2025 because whether they trade him or don't trade him, sadly to anybody who's a fan of Elias Diaz, he's not coming back next year. I can't see him being on the Rockies in 2025 because I think I commented on this before, with assuming that Romo has a good 2024 with Albuquerque, I think then 2025 he could take over the role as the everyday catcher. And if you can't find another way, you don't see anybody in your minor league system or anybody else you think would be better to back him up in 2025, then I guess they could pick up the team option for Jacob Stallings, and he's the backup catcher for the second straight year. Obviously it's, but I do agree with you. Drew Romo is going to be down in AAA this whole season. Hope he has a great year and he's ready to make his debut in 2025. If maybe he's a call up in September. But again, as of right now, just to clarify for everybody watching or listening, the only two catchers on the current Rockies 40-man roster is Diaz and Stallings. So there's for either Romo or McIver to join the roster as the third catcher in that rotation. There's going to probably be a move sometime before the season starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think originally I was thinking Stallings was going to get traded, but then Lewis made a good point that who would want a backup catcher in the postseason that doesn't really
Mm-mm.
hit well? He's not going to be traded. He's most likely going to be DFA'd,
Yeah.
or either like I think we mentioned last week, is that he's probably there's a chance he could stay the entire season, and who knows, maybe the Rockies will bring him back in 2025. But I really believe that this is more like a season, just one season, to have Romo kind of get ready in AAA.
Mm.
And heck, maybe if Romo just goes on fire in Albuquerque, maybe they do something with Diaz or DFA Stallings, and then they have McIver be Romo's backup. I don't know, but Stallings, he's only going to give you like a couple home runs a year. He's usually a 100, 200 hitter. He's going to strike out a little bit, but then the nice thing is he's a defensive catcher, and a lot of people believe that Stallings is more of a, I don't know, he's more of a, because a lot of you see nowadays you see a lot of catchers become managers, coaches. I feel like Stallings is that guy. He's kind of a coach to a lot of the pitchers, especially some of the younger pitchers, and even in the bullpen as well. I'm fine with Stallings. I think it's a decent move. It's not necessarily the move I might have done, but as Tom points out, Stallings' career batting average is 235, so he's not going to hit like over 250. He's not going to shock you, but occasionally he'll give you a base hit or two. But Stallings is whatever. I mean, I'm fine with it. I like his defense. I like his framing. One of the best
Yeah.
catchers in terms of defense and framing in baseball. So I like that. OPS of 647, as Tom points out as well. So I'm fine with Stallings. And so I think this tandem that with Diaz and Stallings, by the way, they were together in Pittsburgh some years back. So I know some people on Instagram pointed that out to us. So I think the Rockies, they kind of knew this, and maybe I know some people say, well, that's a Rockies move. Well, maybe they saw something in Stallings that's, what, maybe it could help our pitchers out a little bit, because Stallings caught some of the Marlins pitchers over the last couple of years, and
Mhm.
some of those Marlins hurlers are really, really good. Alcantara, Yuri Perez, who made his debut last year, big prospect for them. Edward Cabrera, Trevor Rogers. So, Stallings has caught really good pitchers in the past, and I think it's going to really help some of the younger guys in that rotation and even in the bullpen, like I said. So, those are your catchers. And again, we'll look at, once the season gets rolling, who knows, maybe the Rockies will do something with Romo or McIver or even Braxton Fulford. That's another name that we've kind of mentioned on the podcast as well. Stallings, by the way, 2023 defensive WAR is 3.00. That's a thumbs up. That's a good.
Correction,
Career-wise,
actually, sorry. I'm sorry. It's real quick. Sorry, correction. 3.3. My mistake.
a 3.3, and then career WAR is 7.0. So
It's pretty good. That's pretty good.
really, really good. So, really good defense. The Rockies really like their defensive catchers. I'll take that.
Yeah. Plus like an advantage if there's anybody you're looking to trade pitcher, for example, if you flip Dakota Hudson at the deadline, Stallings can help you with that, because when you have I look at it also when you sign a backup catcher, that's usually someone who's defense first. And like I said, if you're looking to flip anybody at the deadline, like for example Hudson or Quantrill, even somebody could use him if he's having a good first half. Stallings can help you with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember a couple years ago, Stallings had that big walk-off home run against, was it Edwin Diaz? Right? Yeah, it was in Edwin Diaz. I think it was in Pittsburgh. I think.
When he was against the Mets or when he was with
I think,
Seattle.
yeah, it was against the Mets when he was with the Pirates. There's a
Oh,
YouTube video, and I think you can
oh,
look it up on YouTube. Our listeners can check that out. But
I
you know
will.
what? Maybe he can get one off of, I don't, because okay, I still, for some reason, I still think Kenley Jansen. Like whenever I think about Kenley Jansen, I'm like, yeah, he's probably still in LA, but he's still in Boston. I think he's on that 2-year deal or something,
It
something like that.
it was a 2-year deal. Yes.
And so, maybe because that's right, because Diaz is coming back this year, I think, because he had
Mhm.
that injury at the WBC. So maybe if the Mets come to Coors Field, maybe Stallings is a guaranteed walk-off home run there. So we'll see. But anyways, Stallings, he's a reliable defensive catcher behind the plate, and that's
Mhm.
what the Rockies could definitely use. However, I know a lot of people have been telling me, complaining, well, our defense is good, but we just have no offense. Well, in some ways, you've heard the term defense wins championships. And,
Mhm.
you do need offense. And we do have offensive guys on the roster. Right now, I like Stallings. Again, he's not going to give you much, and he's not going to be here long. It's only, a 1-year deal.
Mhm.
And he's, like I said, he's probably going to get DFA'd if that. And, at least we're gonna have Romo and somebody else as the catchers next year. Diaz and Stallings will not be here next year. So, um, yeah.
Yeah. To Lewis's point, he talked about last week on the podcast. The more I think about it, I think the move for the 40-man roster, it wouldn't surprise me if Willie McIver is added as the third catcher on the 40-man roster. And, all good health willing, knock on wood there if you didn't hear that. Hopefully Diaz and Stallings don't suffer any major injuries. Hopefully that they go through and just routine soreness that comes with being a catcher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
But
then,
McIver,
yeah.
I would be excited to see his debut. I know he had a pretty good year last year in AAA in 60. Hold on, I have it right here. In 49 games with Albuquerque, he had a slash line of 252, 383, 393 for a 776 OPS. Not bad for a AAA catcher. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be. Plus, he's got good defensive prowess. So
Yeah. How
it'd
old
be
is
exciting.
McIver?
Give me one moment. Let me go back to my. Let me go back to
26 or
this.
27.
He is 27. He'll be 28 in October.
Yeah, there's a lot of players in AAA that are right around that age, and it's just
Mm.
like they haven't made their debut yet. Like, Coco Montez, I know he was kind of up there in that age range, and he made his debut last year, and I was really excited for Coco Montez. And again, we'll get to him in a second.
Mm.
But you know, I would like to see, yeah, like you said, I want to see McIver,
Mm.
Fulford get that opportunity. But if it's not this year, next year is going to be that year, and you got to give them time. But at the same time, though, they've been down there for a while, so you're kind of like I'm itching to see some of those guys because I think they definitely deserve a chance to get some playing time.
I agree. At this point, like as we pointed out, both the two major league catchers are either on 1-year deals or 1-year deals with an option. So you could say the writing is on the wall for next year.
Hmm. Yeah, as we move to the infield, I guess that's really because there's the Rockies. They've done this, and usually, with the entire roster with the outfielders that the Rockies have in the infield, I think that they're just going to have two catchers, and that's going to be Stallings and Diaz. Diaz is going to be the
Mhm,
starter, obviously. Let's move over to the infield. So at first base, the obvious first baseman is going to be Chris Bryant. He's,
mhm,
during the offseason at the winter meetings, Bill Schmidt said that Bryant will be the starting first baseman. And again, I love this move. And we've talked about this, back during the winter meeting. I love this move. I think this is a great move for Chris. I think
mhm,
it's a great move for the Rockies. It might help Chris play a lot more games. Well, maybe not a lot, but some more games to stay healthy because you're paying him. He's your highest paid player on your team. Got to play him. He's got to stay healthy. And Brian, I still believe he can be a solid player for the Rockies. He won't be the player that he was in Chicago, but I think he still can contribute at a pretty good level. I think he
mhm,
could definitely hit 20, 25 plus home runs, heck, maybe even 30 in Coors Field with the offensive ballpark. And he can get, I mean, he has okay defense. I know in the outfield he had a negative defensive WAR, um, but I still like his utility there. He can play outfield, he can play infield. You just can't pitch. uh, so I like Brian at first base, and then of course we'll go through the other positions. Then we'll kind of do the backups or the utility guys that are right after those guys. So Brian at first base, Rogers at second base. That's pretty the solid, clear to answer right there. Tovar at shortstop, and then Ryan McMahon at third base. Um, is that how you're going to have your infield lineup, Tom?
Real quick, on your comment there, I just want to double check Chris Bryant's baseball reference page, make sure he has not made an appearance as a pitcher. He is not. Just kind of, I just wanted to be because I was going to comment on that, but I just wanted to be sure before I said
Yeah.
anything else. No, I know that during his time with the Cubs, Anthony Rizzo did make some appearances on the mound, in blowout
Oh yeah.
games, but I just want to be sure if Bryant was one of those guys. He was not. Uh, but
Yeah.
any, but anyway, my projected opening day. Well, if you look at the 40-man roster, just a real quick comment, they have not updated to move Chris Bryant to infielders. He's still listed in with the outfielders, so I'm not sure if they'll keep it as such. But excuse me, my opening day as of right now, if opening day was tomorrow, I would go Chris Bryant at first, Brendan Rodgers at second base, Ezekiel Tovar at shortstop, and the Gold Glove nominee Ryan McMahon at third base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With of course, um, it's well, yeah, we'll go in more explanations, but yeah, I would also say that Montero would be on the opening day roster. I could see Hunter Goodman also being on the opening day roster as well. With, you know, no, those would be the only infielders because that I would have. I'm just trying to think of anybody else who would be on it. Because I'm back and forth with Toglia. That's a maybe pending, any injuries that happen in spring training. He could make it on the opening day roster, but as far as is, those are the two other infielders I could see being. Oh wait, shoot, I forgot. Did I include? Oh no, who make the opening roster? But I was trying to think of somebody else who could be the backup middle infielder, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, but those are
Okay.
the two
Yeah.
other ones I could see having the best chance to make it.
Same. I'm going with Montero at first base. I think he'll be a backup
Mhm.
to Brian. I think the Rockies, they really liked Montero, and especially in the second half. He was playing a little bit better defense. I think, the Rockies are not going to put him at third base ever again, unless if, Ryan
Mhm.
McMahon gets injured or whatever. Um, God willing, hopefully that doesn't happen. But um, I think Montero, he's going to be the backup for first baseman for the Rockies. I think in many ways, I think they like him a little bit more than Toglia at this point. I think Montero has a little bit more power, than Toglia. However,
Mhm.
we've seen in the minor leagues that Toglia has pretty good pop.
Yes.
But Montero, man, I mean, let me pull up his stats here.
Mhm.
Okay, so Montero had 11 home runs last year, 284 at bats, 39
Mhm.
RBIs, 243, 716 OPS. So Montero has pop. It's just that he still kind of struggles with that slider away, and he's kind of like Tovar at points last year. They kind of struggled with that away pitch. Montero has the power to hit definitely over 20, maybe even 25 home runs.
Mhm.
And Montero, though, at the end of the season, we kind of saw him get hot in that final homestand against, I believe, the Giants, or the second to last homestand. Correct me on that. Against the Giants and the Cubs. He was just on fire. I just remember that, and I think the Rockies really like that, and they like his bat. He can play the DH. He can play first base. So I think he's a pretty sure guy to be on that opening day roster. And then, but he's going to be probably mainly playing infield at first base
Mhm.
behind Chris Bryant. Let me bring back up the roster here. I'm like looking on the MLB app, and sometimes, especially for my Android phone, it reloads the entire thing, so I have to go back to this page. It takes me like a whole 30 seconds, but um,
Well, I guess I was to my comment earlier about anybody else back in infield. They still have Hunter Goodman listed on the roster as an infielder. They don't have him
mhm,
as where you and I kind of talk if he could make the opening day starting lineup as the right fielder. Um, but the more and more I think about, I think you have brought up him in the past, Julio Carreras. I
mhm,
think he could have a chance to make the opening day roster as the backup middle infield, unless the Rockies make an extra roster move. But
mhm.
yeah, that's I mean, but again, we'll probably get to him in a minute.
Yeah, and with Toglia, I think Toglia is probably going to start the year in AAA.
I would
As
agree.
much as I love Toglia, we saw him last year. The Rockies sent him down. He was still struggling.
Hmm.
He wasn't
Yeah.
hitting that well. He was hitting just, I think, a little bit above 200, maybe above 220, right around that range. At
I'll
one
double
point,
check.
I might be wrong,
I'll double
but
check real quick. Go ahead. I'll double
okay.
check real fast.
Yeah, and Toglia, he's going to start the year in AAA, and I feel like the Rockies are like running. They're starting to lose their patience on Toglia.
Mm,
And he could be a trade option, or the Rockies might just cut him. If he continues to underperform the way the Rockies want him to be, the sad reality is that he could be on his way out. But I hope that's not the case, because I want all these players to do well and perform. But right now, he just has not. There's been like small moments in the big leagues where we've seen, oh man, Toglia, he could be a really solid player for us. He had a really
mhm,
good, solid
yeah.
series for us. But then he gets back into these trends to where he can't find the ball. And his defense, though, man, it's really, really good at first base.
Mhm,
I mean, he could definitely win a gold glove at first base in the big leagues. It's just that offensively, it's just not there. And I know there were some comparisons with Todd Helton, and I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, this guy's going to be the future Todd Helton for the Rockies." Well, to be honest with you, it's hard to put up numbers like the Hall of Famer Todd Helton, right? And I'm not saying it's not going to happen with Toglia, but I just don't see it, unfortunately. But again, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he proves all of us wrong, and he can just get on fire in AAA and get on that opening day roster. But for me, I see him starting in AAA. Hunter Goodman, I think Goodman's going to be on the opening day roster.
mhm,
Just the way, I mean,
mhm,
he didn't play a whole lot last year. The Rockies are not going to be like, okay, you're going back to AAA. Now that could happen, but I think Goodman is going to be more of a right fielder, and I think even the Rockies mentioned last year to end the season that Goodman was going to be with Blackman and those guys to be in that like utility role where it's almost like that 6-man utility thing where you kind of rotate right field, DH, first base. And I think Goodman can even catch, but I think the Rockies really want him at in right field, DH, that sort of thing. So Goodman, we'll see him at first base, but I think really I'm looking for the two first base guys. I'm looking at Bryant and Montero. Second base, I think the backup second baseman will be Alan Trejo. I think, of course, will he be on the opening day roster again? We don't know. You're just kind of putting stuff together, kind of guessing which players might be the backup guys to these guys, or
mhm,
who will be playing this year. But Alan Trejo, I could see him being on the opening day roster. It's going to be close. I think with the additions that they made, of course, I just thought of this the other day because if you think about it, not Montero, Marquez and Senzatella, they're going to be going to the 60-day IL. So that's going to open up two spots for them. And however, with Zimmer. going on the roster, that leaves one more spot open. So the
Mhm.
Rockies, they will have one spot open. I think that will be probably for Trejo. So I think Trejo would be that guy because he can play
Mhm.
shortstop, he can play third base, he can play second base. And so I think Trejo would be that other guy. If I'm looking at other guys in the infield, I don't think Bernabel is going to get that shot yet. I think he still needs some growing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trejo, like Tom points out, he will need to be added to the 40-man roster because he's off of that right now. He was outrighted to AAA
Mhm.
this offseason. Again, Julio Carreras, a guy that I really like. I don't think he's going to be going to the opening day roster to start the year. He'll probably be still in AAA with
Okay.
Bernabel
Mhm.
and Toglia. So my two backup infielders are going to be Alan Trejo and Montero. I think with Tovar is going to get a lot of playing time this year. They're going to give him another big look. They really like Tovar, obviously, but they're not going to, move him aside. They really like, Tovar. He was a Gold Glove finalist last year, but I think the two backup infielders for me are going to be Montero and Alan Trejo. Alan Trejo, he can be a pretty decent player. Pretty good defense. I mean, he has some power in that bat. Maybe not a lot, but he hit some home runs. He hit some dingers last year. So those are my two guys.
I would agree. I mean, we've talked about this in the past that unfortunately with Bryant being moved to first base full time, there's a bit of a logjam there with, you got Goodman, you got Montero. If Bryant was able to still play the outfield on an everyday basis, then Montero would definitely be playing first base. Then he'd get his shot to play every day with a day off here and there. But yeah, they have to make when they're like as you point out, when you're paying Chris Bryant as much money as you are, you have to find some way to keep him on the field or put him in the best position possible to make sure that he can stay on the field. And first base, is probably the best option for it. So, yeah, and he has plenty of experience, not like ever. And to your comment about Montero, he's a big guy. He's 6'5",
Mm-hmm.
he's 6'5", and he's over 200. He's over 220 pounds. He's got it's like some of the videos he has on Instagram from this offseason. I think he's working at is it Driveline? I think he's working at right. He's
Yeah.
working at it right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's again. He was doing it shirtless. Probably. But you can see the tan lines. But he's got the drive, whether it's the left or his natural side or the right side. He's got that drive. He can drive the ball. The only
Mm-hmm.
question is, I guess I guess doing this, maybe he needs to do more film study to understand how pitchers are going to attack him. Cause when you're a switch hitter, it's a little easier when you don't have, when it's tough for pitchers to throw sliders away from you, they're going to throw them into you. So you have to see it. You have to just read it in differently and kind of understand, okay, here it's going to slide right in and go right almost to my knees. But I don't know. We'll see. And to your comment about how he did last year, the major leagues, woof, he did not do well in 45 games with the Rockies last year. But in 78 games with Albuquerque, he slashed 257, 368, 474, 842 OPS with 16 homers and 64 RBIs. And he didn't strike out a ton in 78 games, struck out 82 times. So, like I said, he has, but like I do agree with you. This is his, I don't want to say last hurrah, but this I think could be the straw that broke the camel's back for the organization. They've given him enough rope. And if a spot opens up, God forbid, knock on wood there again, Bryant gets hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be opposed to say, okay, whether Montero or Toglia, Montero play first, Toglia, you can play right field and give him his chance. But I do agree with you in terms of the backup infielders. Montero will be the backup first baseman, and with Goodman, maybe he'll mix in one or two starts here and there if he comes out of right field and Blackman goes out there. And then, of course, I do agree. I completely forgot about Alan Trejo. I forgot that they had signed him to another 1 year. Was it a minor league deal they signed him to?
I think he was already on a deal. I think they just outrighted him.
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
But yeah, I mean, he had that walk off home run moment last year. So I completely spaced out and forgot he was back with the team. So yeah, he'll be because look at the 40 man, he needs to be added. So once he's added after sometime in spring trading, yeah, I agree. He'll be the backup, second short and third baseman.
Yeah, I think he's still under team control, if I remember correctly. So I think that's the reason why he was outrighted at AAA.
I'll look real fast.
Mm-hmm. But I guess one player that's kind of come up too is, we've talked with Lewis last week about this guy and kind of briefly, but Aaron Chunk, because, we kind of at the beginning we started we talked about how, there might be some minor league guys to watch out for. Obviously, Julio Carreras, he's going to be one to watch out for. He could make his debut later this year, especially if the Rockies open up some room on the roster if they make any trades. Um, and then Warming Bernabel, I think he's a little bit farther behind, I think. And then you have Aaron Schunk. Aaron Schunk, I'm really intrigued by him. Again, mentioned last week that he had a pretty decent year in AAA. I think he has a possibility to. I know he's on the invite list,
Mhm.
but I know I know he's really looking to get in the big leagues soon. Hopefully that's this year, but we just don't need any injuries, and that's a big thing. So, um, in our notes here, Trejo is arbitration eligible after the 2025 season. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah. I
so basically he's gonna have to. I mean, the Rockies, I think they like Trejo. I don't think they're gonna do that. I mean, however, I think once it's going to be interesting to see because once Amador is up here, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, what do we do now? Because the infield, you have a couple infield prospects coming up. Of course, the big one is Amador. Okay, so what are you going to do? I think Trejo could still be that backup infielder for Amador once he's ready, once he's going to be our starting second baseman in 2025.
Mhm.
But Rogers. What if Rogers does really well and he stays healthy this year? The Rockies might be like, hey, actually, we like Rogers.
Mhm.
Maybe Amador will be our backup second baseman so he can kind of learn the ropes next year. Because, one thing I do like that the Rockies kind of do is that they let some of their guys, sometimes they let them start like Tovar. Tovar was ready to go. Amador, next year when he makes his debut, will he be ready? And maybe the Rockies are like, you know what, we're gonna give Amador a few starts here and there, but we're gonna have him kind of be the backup infielder to kind of learn behind Rogers, and kind of learn the ropes there. Amador, however, we've heard that he has pretty good defense. We all know it about his bat. He has more walks than strikeouts in his minor league career, which is insane. Go check out his stats. Um, so Trejo's a very intriguing guy. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Rockies bring him back next year. They really like this guy, but I just feel like, there comes a point in time when you kind of have to say, hey, you know what, you've done a great job for us. We thank you for what you've done for the organization, but we have this prospect coming up, Amador, and we know we need to make some room, room on the roster, and they might have to part with Trejo because he's not the future. Kind of like with Connor Joe. I know he was a starting left fielder, but in Trejo, he's not a starting player. But the Rockies basically traded Connor Joe because they saw Connor Joe that he was kind of blocking the outfield prospects that were coming up with Brenton Doyle, right? I mean, if we
Mhm.
if we would have not have gotten rid of Joe, I don't know if we would have seen um, Brenton Doyle this past year or Nolan Jones and then of course you had Jonathan Daza who was injured, and so I think it's a harsh reality. It's part of the game. It's part of the sport. Sometimes you have to learn to let go of some of these players that you kind of like, and they're not the long term, I guess, the long part of your future, if that's the word. So I like Trejo, but I just feel like if Amador is ready to go by next year, maybe Trejo could be a backup. But if it's Rogers and Amador next year, I think Trejo is probably on his way out, unless if something happens. I don't know, but with the Rockies, with the pile at first base that they already have with Goodman, Toglia, Montero, I feel like Trejo next year could be on his way out.
Yeah, if Rodgers does stay healthy and plays over, let's say, 140 games, that puts the Rock and he performs well both defensively. Again, as a reminder to everybody, he has a Gold Glove on his resume, and he performs well at the plate. That puts the Rockies in. That puts Bill Schmidt in a very precarious position. Do you? Because not to mention, we haven't even talked about other non-roster invitees like Ryan Ritter and Sterling Thompson are going to be
Hmm.
there as well in spring training, and they're making some noise. I mean, I
Yeah.
commented on Blake Street Banner's Twitter post the other day that I'm excited about Ryan Ritter. I think he does have the defensive capabilities to be a major league shorts, to be a major league middle infielder. That haven't seen the offensively. I haven't looked into him too much, but he's someone I am definitely intrigued to find out how he progresses over the next year or two. But again, yeah, Rodgers, if he plays well, again, it's in a very tough spot. Bill Schmidt will have to make a decision because you pointed out Amador, he's coming. I don't
Mhm.
barring something crazy happening, he's going to be here in a matter of time, and it before you snap your fingers, he could be right here. And again, all good willing, Tovar is still our shortstop. Amador is going to force the issue. I could see, given that Rogers is almost to free agency,
Mhm.
even if he plays well this year, I could definitely see Bill Schmidt making that very tough decision and trading if he gets a good offer for him. Um, I could see him trading Rogers, which opens the door for Amador to come up and seamlessly take over that role and play every day and not be a guy watching from the dugout. But yeah, to comment on your thing, to comment on you about trading players, as GMs and when you run a baseball team, you got to take emotion. We as fans, we love these guys. We root for them. We want all our players to be every prospect. We want them all to be successful, but unfortunately, that's not always the case. We get emotionally attached. GMs, they have to take emotion out of it because if you make decisions based on emotion, that could lead to bad decisions, which could ultimately get you fired. So again, I'm rooting for Rodgers to do well, and if they trade him, I'm still going to root for him to do well. But I think ultimately, again, barring good health for him, this this could be his last year in a Rockies uniform. I think
Mhm. Yeah,
it's
and
it is sad, but
yeah.
those things happen.
Mhm. And Bill Schmidt, and when you talked about Amador coming in, pretty quickly,
Mhm.
I think during the Fan Fest, Bill Schmidt said, and I think even Bud Black said something in that a lot of these prospects are actually going to be here sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes out on those guys, and that's what spring training is all about. You're getting a look at these prospects, you're looking at these younger players, and you never know. I mean, Connor Joe, again, a couple years ago when he
Mhm.
was
Yeah.
on the team, a lot of people thought, oh, he's probably going to be a guy in AAA, but no, he was on the opening day roster and he made it, and he actually played pretty darn well,
Yeah.
and you never know. We could see a prospect make his debut. I mean, Zach Veen I've heard some stuff that Zach Veen could potentially be the starting right fielder on opening day. You never know. And it would be kind of cool, but I personally, am I going to say it's not going to happen? No, but I still think that we still need to see a little bit of Zach Veen. He hasn't played in AAA ball yet. I don't know if the Rockies would be willing to have him jump completely, over, AAA quickly. I don't think they would want to do that. I think they would want to be cautious a little bit just with Zach, just kind of get him back to hitting, I guess, and being Zach Veen of who he is. But I think it's pretty safe to say I think Zach Veen will probably, if he, of course, stays healthy in spring training and has a good spring training, I think he'll probably be in AAA to start the season. Same thing with Drew Romo. He's going to be in AAA. There's no question he's not going to be in um, Double A. Jordan Beck, that's of course we're going to get into prospects next week, but Jordan Beck
Mhm.
is another guy that is probably going to be starting in Triple A. So I've heard, or according to Fangraphs, they have him starting in Triple A. So yeah, a lot of these prospects they're coming up soon, very quickly. I mean,
Mhm.
Toglia, when he made his debut in 2022, he spent like a week in Albuquerque and he got called up because he hit like 3 or 4 home runs that week in AAA. So you never know. We might be seeing, Amador, Fernandez, some of these guys make their debuts this year. Um, I, again, once we do our season preview in another month or, a month or so, because we're going to do an episode right before the season starts, we're going to kind of give our thoughts on, prospects making their debut that year or predictions for prospects making their debuts. But I could see a couple of them, maybe making their debuts. And, Amador, I think he's knocking at the door because he's the number one prospect.
Mhm.
Fernandez, he's certainly there, but I think Fernandez is going to be a little bit longer just because he still has a swing and a miss problems, kind of strikes out a little bit. I'd like to see that
Mhm.
come down. But some of the other guys like Zach Veen, Drew Romo, I think they're really, really close. Like they're basically knocking on the door. But and we've, like we talked about, I think Romo will be most likely, next year, maybe if this year, probably like in the last week or two of the season, kind of get, my favorite word, ever, a cup of coffee at the big leagues. So, yeah, these prospects are coming. And like I said, who knows, we might see one or two of them on the opening day roster. I mean, Fernandez and Julio Carreras are on the 40-man roster. So, They're going to be on that roster for the rest of these season because the Rockies really like those guys, but also it kind of gives them a better opportunity to make the roster because again, when you're on the 40-man roster, it's a lot easier for you to call up a player because you don't have to. Because if you take a guy off, you have to put him through waivers and all that sort of crap. So yeah, a lot of these players are coming, and it's going to be really exciting, especially in 2025. And when you look at the team right now, and in terms of WAR and the zips and everything, it doesn't look good, but there's definitely some stuff to be excited about, especially when it comes to the infielders. And so I think with the infield, one thing that's going to be pretty clear, I think the infield defense is going to be pretty solid this year. Bryant, I know he's probably the least valuable guy in the infield in terms of defense, but you're looking at a Gold Glover at second base, a almost Gold Glover at shortstop. I mean, he could have won it last year. I know Dansby Swanson was the clear favorite to win last year. He won it. And then you have Ryan McMahon, who still has yet to win a Gold Glove, but he's been a finalist for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years now. So, 3 years.
I believe it's 3.
Yeah. So you're going to have a solid infield defense, and that's something that the Rockies, they've done a great job. In the last 3, 4, 5, even more years when they had Arenado and Story and DJ and all those guys. So I'm excited to see what this infield is going to do. The catchers, they're the catchers. Diaz, I still think Diaz can still have somewhat of a solid season. I'm just afraid that he's going to regress a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll have another solid season. And I saw somebody list the other day. It might have been, I forget who it was, but they basically had Diaz as a poor catcher. And I think Diaz is underrated a little bit. He has some power, and he can get on base. Good. When he's hot, he can do really well. And his defense, his arm is good, is really good too. And I think Diaz can be overlooked a little bit, but I think with this infield and with the catching tandem that the Rockies have this year, on paper, it might not look the prettiest because a lot of these guys are rookies or young guys, especially in the infield. I'm not talking about catchers. I'm looking at the infield. But there's definitely some guys to be excited about and really good defense and a lot of potential. And Rogers, we've talked about so many times is that can he stay healthy? And like we've said, a couple years ago, he was at one point the best player on the team, for a period of time because, he had that really poor start, and then he all of a sudden just caught fire, in June, and then he rode that out to the rest of the season, and I think that was the year he won the Gold Glove. So Rogers, he can definitely be a top player for this team when he's healthy and he's in the lineup. We saw that a little bit of last year. In September, he really carried the team in some of those games. Tovar, this guy, he is kind of crazy to think that this guy didn't get a single vote in the National League Rookie of the Year voting process. And Nolan Jones, for him to finish 4th is just whatever. But yeah, Tovar is going to be an incredible shortstop. I think he has a rookie of the, not a rookie of the year. I think he's going to win a Gold Glove eventually down the road. And then McMahon, I think Patrick Saunders put out an article yesterday, or it was either today or yesterday. It was basically, Bill Schmidt was kind of being honest about Ryan McMahon, that McMahon has been basically average. And he's, I like that for Bill Schmidt. Bill Schmidt is being, I guess, vulnerable, I guess, if that's the word, to some of his players. McMahon, he's got to step up. He's got to stop striking out because McMahon, he's we've talked about it before, that he has this problem of striking out. And I think if he can cut those down, McMahon, if he has a little bit more power to that swing and he can kind of change that a little bit, McMahon can be a top player for this team. And we just need to see a little bit better baseball of Ryan McMahon. So again, I think this defense in the infield is going to be solid. Offense is going to be, I think it's going to be improving this upcoming year. And then the catchers, we'll wait and see what happens. But I think, looking in the infield, we're going to have a pretty good defensive year, hopefully.
Just a quick comment about the Connor Joe fans out there. He played 100 in 2022 with the Rockies. He played 111 games, but this past year with the Pittsburgh Pirates, he played 133 games, and he did pretty well. He improved his entire slash line with 247, 339, 421, and 107 OPS plus. So in some of those, he did pretty well, and he had 11 home runs and 42 RBIs. He played all over too. He was just a second here. He played right field, first base, and left field. Mostly played. He actually played the most games in right field. So he was a big contributor for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So it's really nice to see him doing well. Obviously, we would like to see him do well with us, but good for him either way. And especially, although I did not know this until last season, he was a cancer survivor too. I did not know that until earlier season. Somebody told me about that. So when I was looking up, thinking about Anthony Rizzo. My final comments. I think, like as you pointed out, it's great that we have 3 infielders who are expected to be the starters that either have won a Gold Glove or have been nominated for a Gold Glove one or multiple times, because that only bodes well for the pitchers. Because we have 2 guys who focus on keeping the ball down the ground, in Hudson and Quantrill, and also Kyle. Oh, sorry, I should say 3, because Kyle Freeland is a big changeup guy. So that definitely does help infield. Hopefully, again, as you posted on our social media pages, I have a hot take prediction that Chris Bryant plays 145 plus games. I'm sticking to that, even though there's plenty of people who are calling me nuts for making that that prediction. Excuse me. I'm sticking by it. And if, again, offensively, if I've said it before, I will stick to it. Also, he's not going to be 2016 Chris Bryant. That is in the rearview mirror. But if he bats to a good slash line with the tune of an 8, a low 800 OPS somehow, and has maybe a 120-ish OPS plus, that's something I think we can need out of him, to the point where he could live up to being not just that production of a player, but the better leader. Rogers, again, if he plays 135 games plus and hits well, wins, puts himself in Gold Glove contention, sad to say he could be a trade candidate. Tovar, I'm looking for him to have a great sophomore campaign. He is very talented. I liked, as you commented about in the past, as the season went along, he learned how to recognize breaking balls a lot better, because they are much more sharper when it comes to between AAA and the major leagues. I think he can, if he learns well enough, he's got pop. He could maybe put himself in contention, in the conversation for a Silver Slugger at the shortstop position. That's always a possibility. But the big guy I agree with you, I want to see take that leap forward, that next 1 or 2 steps, is Ryan McMahon. I believe there's so much more in that bat. As I've commented before, I think he needs to level off his swing more. It's too lofty. I understand the guys who launch home runs get paid. You got paid. You got somewhat paid. You're under contract. You got a nice contract that goes through 2027. So just play the game and level it off. Hit like you can. Just understand what pitchers are trying to do to you. Maybe try and maybe you should always be geared up for a fastball that when you're guessing breaking ball. Just suggestions. I really hope he can take that step forward, because if he can be that big left-handed bat one of the big left-handed bats to complement Nolan Jones in the lineup, the sky's the limit for him. And the sky's the limit for this team if he can do that. The catchers, like I said, I think Diaz can. I don't think he's going to drop. It's like the great, or I shouldn't say the great, former GM Dan O'Dowd once said, catcher is the most difficult position to quantify. I don't think we're going to see too much of a drop-off. Again, Diaz isn't going to be in his age 33 season. I expect him to be a good offensive contributor. The pitchers love throwing to him. Stallings, I think he'll be a good backup. So I can see this infield and catchers being quite productive as far as what we're looking for a team trying to take that next step. And I think we got some good candidates. And again, as we've talked about, we'll talk about prospects probably another time. Amador, I'm excited to see how he does down in the minor leagues this year. Really excited to see.
Yeah, 100%.
And also Ryan Ritter too, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And we talked about Ryan Ritter last week when we posted a reel on our social medias, YouTube, that sort of thing, on TikTok as well. A kind of a reel of what Lewis was thinking about Ryan Ritter, and we kind of agree with him on that. But yeah, like we both said tonight, is that one of the big things I guess that's huge whenever you're on defense, and it really helps out the pitcher too, is when you have a really good defense, because you can save runs, with defense. And I remember, especially 2021, when Ryan McMahon had that solid year at third base. And he really should have won a Gold Glove in 2021 because he had a better. I forget what stats they were. I think it might have been DRS or something like that, or defensive WAR.
Mm.
But his metrics show that he should have won in 2021, but it went to Nolan Arenado. And I mean, Nolan was still incredible, at third base that year. This year, it went to Key Brian Hayes deservedly because Arenado had a surprisingly a poor season defensively considering what he's done in his career. But one of the big things, as I was going to mention, is that for your pitching, it really helps out when you have a solid defensive core in your infield, especially in the middle infield, second base, shortstop, and we have that. But the Rockies, they have three guys in their infield that can play solid defense, and again, we'll get to the outfielders as well next week. But when you have a solid group of guys in the infield and outfield with good defensive numbers, you're gonna save a lot of runs off the scoreboard. And the big thing too, again, we're gonna talk about this next week. But when you allow when there's bloops in the outfield, that's almost as worse as giving up a solo home run in course field, right? We've heard that a lot of things. You can give up a home run, solo home run in course field, but when you give up a base hit in the gap, because there's a lot of gaps in course field, a lot of wide gaps, and there's bases loaded or two guys on, that you just gave up two runs there, and then you can get out of hand. And so the big thing is making sure that you kind of have a vacuum in the infield, and the Rockies, they kind of have that now. And I think it's just going to get better, especially with Tovar with his defense, and for him to be a Gold Glove finalist in his rookie season is very impressive and very exciting to see. And this guy is only like 21, 22 years old, and he still has a ton of years left in the big leagues, and we're really pushing for him to have a really solid season this year. So, but yeah, whenever you have a really solid defense, it really helps out the pitching as well. And so I'm really excited about next week because we're going to be talking about the outfielders, and then the week after that, I think we're going to be doing like the starting pitchers, relief pitchers, that sort of thing. So, um, yeah, I think with the infield the Rockies have this year, I think it's going to be exciting. And again, last year, a lot of it had to do with injuries in the first half, and again, second half of the season, I think this team was playing a little bit better. It's just that there were some issues with other side of the team, other parts of the team, that they were kind of just, they were already they were playing hard, but they just wanted to end the season well on a good note. And I'm really excited because you never know, this team could kind of surprise people, I guess. I still think that this is going to be somewhat of a poor season for the Rockies. And I'm not saying that they're going to make the playoffs or make a World Series run. But I think, you're gonna see an improvement, especially in the infield this year. And I'm excited to see Brian at first base. So those are my final thoughts.
I agree, and hopefully we're going to need some defense, especially with some of the offenses that we have in our division.
Absolutely.
Namely the Dodgers.
Uh, yeah, like so. I just saw some videos yesterday. It looks like um, their pitching stuff they've already reported, I think, or at
Yeah.
least some of their pitchers are showing up. So again, it's a sign that baseball is, I guess, back kind of. Well, so okay, so I think I want to say on Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday or tomorrow. Like, most of the pitchers are going to be reporting, or at least some
Mhm.
pitchers will be reporting. But the first workout day for the Rockies catchers and pitchers and catchers is going to be on Thursday. Yeah, the 15th. And so that's exciting, really exciting stuff. I mean, baseball. I know I tweeted this out, but I ordered the Rockies purple spring training cap, so that's coming in tomorrow. So I'm excited to wear that. I'll send you a
Awesome.
picture, and I might post it on my social media. So those who are listening, be sure to follow me. I'll be posting that out tomorrow.
Just a
But
quick
yeah,
reminder, yeah, that's
yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. But yeah, the Dodgers and Padres are early because March 21st they have that Korea
Oh,
series.
that's right. Yeah. I always like that. It's kind of gives you a preview, and then they go back to spring training, and then they start the season in April. So it's like they're getting an early start. I like that. How baseball is kind of getting an early start. For some reason I always like when opening days like the last day of March because
Mhm.
instead of April, because April, I remember when opening days would be like closer to April 11th, April 10th. It's just like, man, can we have it in like late March? But yeah.
And of course, it's exciting that we're going to be in Mexico on April 27th, 28th.
Yeah, for those who are listening, if you live in that area or if you're going down there, be sure to
Mhm.
send us pictures because I
Oh
want to see
yeah.
that. Because
Yeah.
I think the Rockies, the last time they had a regular season game down there was
Mm.
back during the like Blake Street Bomber days. They had opening day against the Padres, I think, but that was in Monterey, I think,
Yeah,
if that's correct.
I'm checking the city
It
to
was like
where.
Monterey, Mexico, I
Yeah, I'm
think.
looking for this year if it's gonna be the same. I
I think it's
don't.
Mexico City. I think it's Mexico City.
Yeah, hold on, I'm looking.
Okay.
I think if it's at Mexico City, then we're used. That's above sea level, so we're gonna be
Yeah.
used to that part of it.
Well, I think
Uh,
last year we saw a lot of like runs scored, like a bunch of runs scored in that Giants and Padres series. So expect to see the ball flying
it's
in those two games.
it is Mexico City. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
So
Looking at, I'm checking. I'm checking. Oh, go ahead. Oh yeah, tickets are already sold out for both games.
oh really? Yeah.
Yeah, so just so a heads up to anybody who's going, if you are going, I'm jealous. Please send
Yeah.
us all pictures. But if you're not, you're planning to, there's nothing available unless you want to pay the upcharge from buying it from somebody.
My brother the other day who was like, yeah, the Astros are gonna beat us,
Mm,
a lot, or they're gonna beat us really bad. And I'm like, you never know. Actually,
you never know.
the Rockies might do something. I don't know. It depends on like how the teams are playing, but it's gonna be fun. I think hopefully there's a lot of Rockies fans there. Again, it's for it to be sold out, already is
Mhm.
pretty cool. So, I think Mexico, and that's one of the things too, is that, again, this we could talk all night about this, but expansion, is Mexico because I think Mexico City has been in the comments there
Yeah.
for potentially having an expansion team, but I think they're more down the list. But it'd be kind of cool to see a team in Mexico City, because I know down there they love their baseball.
Well, have one and have had a second team in Canada. So we
Hmm.
have teams that are not in the United States, but yeah, they've been a candidate. They've been rumored to be a potential candidate down there. But if
Hmm.
that's to happen, I think that's not going to be the first choice with the current expansion plan.
Yeah.
But it's down the road. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's an idea.
Yeah. Mexico City, again, it's going to be fun. That's going to be late April. So I was just working on templates and graphics for that for our social media pages. It's pretty good. I showed Tom. I'll have to show you guys later once that day comes. But anyways, folks, I think that will do it for tonight's episode of the podcast. Please be sure to follow, rate, and review all of our social media pages. We love hearing from all of our beautiful and wonderful listeners out there. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.